Welcome everyone to Travel Massive Glasgow Live in conjunction with the Digital Tourism Show. So I thank you all for joining us on what it seems multiple platforms. I think the only platform we're not on is Netflix and Amazon Prime. So hopefully you are able to watch us on all these different platforms. We are currently on the Travel Massive website. We are on Facebook, the Tourism Marketing Agency Facebook page, on the Digital Tourism Show Facebook group, the Travel Massive Glasgow Facebook group, as well as YouTube and a whole host of other platforms. So if you are able to see us, and thank you for joining us. If you do have questions, if you are watching on YouTube or on any of the Facebook channels, you can publish questions in the chat, and those questions will come into us for our speakers, and hopefully we will get those guys to answer your questions. So a little bit of housekeeping. This is a new piece of software we're trying for the webinar chat. So I'm hoping that everything is okay at your end. Hopefully you can see us all okay. And if you have any issues, just post it in the chat, and we'll hopefully solve anything that comes up. But hopefully all going well. Hopefully all will be good. So we've got two amazing speakers lined up. Who are thankfully, who we're hopefully going to meet in person in one of our Glasgow events, but have agreed to, as everyone else, we've been in lockdown, agreed to do this online. I know many of you over the last few weeks have been participating in various webinars and workshops, and I'll probably stick to the back teeth of webinars, but hopefully you'll get enough information and enough advice and inspiration from these two speakers going forward. So I can't thank them enough. So what I'm going to do is introduce our first speaker. And again, hopefully this will all work fine. I'm going to introduce you to Chris Newlands. Hello, Chris, are you there?
Hi, Chris. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for joining us.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So for those, for everyone else, Chris Newlands is the owner of Spelfie, but he has also won Innovator of the Year award by the ex-Scottish Forces in a sort of business award category. But I believe today you've just been announced that you're the finalist of the IOD Scotland award for innovation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm delighted, actually. I got the word through about 3 hours ago. So some point in September, I'm one of 4 finalists. So it's exciting times, Chris, to be honest. Certainly in these difficult times, it's good to get some good news.
Excellent, excellent. So Chris is going to show us a little sort of presentation of what Spelfie is about, etc. But before we go into that, Chris, do you want to, for people who don't know who you are and what Spelfie is, want to give me a little bit of background on yourself and the business?
Yeah, very much so. Basically, my background is not travel. I'm a chartered financial planner by profession. So I then started a business called Talk Holiday for a few years, which was the premise was a social travel network. But again, that was difficult to get people to change their behaviours because obviously Facebook, Instagram, and the rest had a real grip on the marketplace. And obviously the name Talk Holiday didn't go down too well in the States or in Europe either. So it was vacation or vacation or voyage. So effectively, we've developed that into Tripsology, which I'll come over with shortly. But before that, before I've been to financial services, I was in the Royal Navy for 6 years, serving Queen and Country, and I think that's where I got the travel bug, if you like. I've been to over 60 countries, and I'm certainly very much a citizen of the world as far as that's concerned.
Excellent, excellent. So you've certainly been around. But I remember Talk Holiday when it first came out. I think that's how we first met. I remember us.
Yeah,
I think it was in Studio 29 or something like that. Where we first met, spoke about Talk Holidays as well. So yeah, it's been a while. So I believe you get some slides to show us, and you're going to talk us through that.
That's okay. Yeah.
So let's hope that all works.
That's fine. Let's try that. 2 seconds. I'll do that. Then press.
So add this to screen.
Is that okay, Chris?
Yeah, I can see you from there. So if you want to take away.
Excellent. Okay, so background, we a number of years ago, 2 years ago or so, decided we were going to bring space to travel, and in partnership with a little known brand called Airbus, who have been fantastic and very much adopted a stance of welcoming and innovation, which is fantastic. So we've looked at 2 elements of this. One was Tripsology, with some really nice ideas around how we could develop Talk Holiday, the social travel platform, aforementioned before, and actually add some science to travel, make it a bit more scientific in terms of research before you travel. And we've come up with two very good ideas, which we believe will actually fly, and I'll explain them to you in a second. And then secondly, we come up with this idea of a space selfie, the ability to capture people at events in real time from space, and all of the attendees thereafter. So very much space to place. There is no such thing as space to face as such from a privacy perspective, but again, that gives you some background initially, and we'll take it from there. I want to chat with you and tell you where we are with Tripsology. We have parked Tripsology, but it's ready to go, probably Q1 in 2021. And the idea behind that would give us the ability to have air quality forecasts. And we think that's actually something that post-COVID is something that actually will become more and more prevalent, as the awareness of the eco impact of some of these factors, because people are dying more of air quality or pollution issues than they are smoking, apparently, 20,000 people a day. We're also looking at 30-day-old satellite imagery, so you'll be able to see hotels, and if there's construction happening around about them. If you went there 5 years ago, if they're on the edge of town, they're probably in the middle of town now through construction. Just try to create a more scientific approach to travel, and we've also got a plastic pollution element to that potentially launching as well, and that launches in 2021. So chat about that for a short time in a second. Spelfie allows you the ability to capture events and attendees from space in real time. If you can imagine something like Expo 2020 and be able to capture that entire event from space and all of the attendees on a daily basis, and then them receiving a souvenir with a pin to show them in the actual picture, and it would be them in the picture, but they may be obviously rather small because the kilometre, it was 600 kilometres away the image was taken. It creates then organic experiential branded content for brands, and again making that a digital disruptor for organisations, brands and DMOs. And again, as far as we're concerned, it gives an alternative to using the classic Facebook, Instagram, Google or Twitter in terms of accessing audience bases.
Tripsology. Travel just got smart. Using data from space and the scientific community will help you make better, more informed decisions. Review your next destination's air quality. Not good enough? Look elsewhere. Air quality is now more harmful than smoking. We all need to start making better choices for everyone's sake. We have a plan, but we need your help. Join our community and help us share the bigger picture, changing the way you travel and discover the world, to help protect you, your family, and local people too. Tripsology. Facts, not fake. A breath of fresh air.
That was my 8-year-old son who basically streamed that. There was a holding slide before that, so apologies that you jumped straight into that, but that was like an overview of a promotional video we've built for Tripsology itself. So let's chat about the coronavirus and also Spelfie. So Spelfie is about the ability to time when a satellite is actually overhead at an event, potentially months and years in advance. So I've called this Spelfie BC, before coronavirus. Excuse the reference from a religious perspective, but you get an understanding of obviously the world before coronavirus and the world after coronavirus thereafter. So before coronavirus, Spelfie was designed to capture events and attendees from space, the future of fan engagement and event activation in partnership with Airbus. And again, a similar video, but again, it's just to demonstrate the ability for literally hundreds of events to be captured on a daily basis, capturing tens of thousands of attendees. And wherever the events are actually taken, or events are actually established, there are destinations local to that too. So there's a crossover between the events and travel from that perspective. We akin it to having a 600-kilometre long selfie stick. So from a B2B perspective, the concept of Spelfie was to create a situation where brands could have an alternative to obviously digital or social media marketing. Quite frankly, it's horrific prolific, and it's very difficult to try and capture or to get any kind of space out there or to be noticed, because there's 25,000 social posts apparently every second. So again, the ability to do that from space is something that seems to be going down well. Our current the current digital event activation model would involve a brand spending money on various social platforms in the hope that they speak to the people who may or may not be at that particular event, possibly targeting millions to target maybe an audience of maybe 30, 40, 50,000 people. Whereas what we can actually offer is the ability to capture that event from space and all of the audience through event activation, through partnership. The attendee gets a picture of the actual event live from space that day, and the brand itself obviously has its branding on there too. And actually the differentiator here is the audience shares the imagery, not the actual event or the brand sponsor, onto social platforms thereafter. So that makes it organic and experiential content, and it has their face on it too. So that tends to be obviously very important in terms of personalization of content. So when we built this concept of global Spelfie, we had another event in mind, which was a motoring-based event that was happening in July or August time. I can't go into exactly which one it was because we're still talking to them just now, and it may be deferred to later on this year. But what was interesting was that they had an audience of between 10 and 12 million people streaming this very event from Japan, for example, and various other countries. And what we looked at is the ability for people to actually remotely connect to that particular event and participate. And by doing so, actually, that would give them a souvenir of their participation, even if it's halfway around the globe. And out with that, it also gives access to brand sponsors and events to that extended audience, which is obviously nirvana for many brands. So again, we can look at stadiums. We can actually have visible from space marketing. That the messaging can be quite distinctive. It can be creative. It can be printed. The choice is theirs, and the attendees get that souvenir of their actual attendance at that particular scenario. A good example, which is not really travel, but obviously it could be travel. If you're looking at a more home-based travel sector in 2020, 2021, if international travel maybe isn't quite so popular, local festivals might be important to the travel sector. And this is an example of last year's Glastonbury. We did a trial at that time. It was a mock-up of Glastonbury. So, and people very often ask, what's the difference between Spelfie and Google Earth? And that does contain some create some confusion. Many images in Google Earth can be a year, 3 years, 5 years, and sometimes 7 years old. And this is an example of Worthy Farm, where the Glastonbury site is actually held. And if you look at Google Earth, then you see our image and you superimpose that, the actual event of Glastonbury itself. If you flick back and forth, you start to realise the real-time experiential value of actually capturing that pop-up city, if you like, in that particular event itself, which I believe 180,000 people actually attend, including all the support network as well. So what we've now done is we've actually flipped this over, and we've looked at how we can use global Spelfie to help destinations with their messaging strategy for government-backed DMOs, destination management organisations, obviously, but because we don't believe that very many airlines, cruise industry sector, or the hotel sectors can afford to spend much money just now in marketing. So again, destinations will be constant, and that they will always survive, obviously, whatever happens after COVID-19. As well, so that would be the one constant in our lives as such. So we're looking at destination marketing during and post COVID-19 crisis, and we're looking at how destinations can share the right message at the right time, almost from our people to your people, and obviously messages of support thereafter. Now, we built this on the basis of the Icelandic volcanic ash crisis scenario that occurred in 2010, when obviously all of the airlines were obviously grounded due to the volcanic ash scenario. Now, out with that, what they found was if they could engage their population, celebrities, all of their nationals, they actually start to write positive content or experiential content that was positive about Iceland. What that actually meant then effectively is that when they came to the other side of the ash cloud, I believe that at one point their actual GDP in relation to travel was less than 1%. And I think between Game of Thrones and all this exercise, it's in excess of 20% now. So again, it's an example of how you turn a crisis into something that hopefully has some degree of a positive outcome, which is maybe difficult to see for some people at this moment in time. I understand that. But again, messages like stay safe, stay at home, missing you, and leveraging the power of the people, creating an army of many influencers and getting that message out there. And Spelfie allows DMOs to effectively mirror this opportunity, and we can capture that message written in a field, written beside a major landmark as such. And just now that might be printed, or it might be using crop circle type messaging rather than people. But post-COVID, you might get people together to create a message that says we're open, or whatever the case may be thereafter. So a couple of examples that I'll share with you in a second. But fundamentally, this means that people can be at home. I've used Australia as an example. The image could be taken at the Sydney Opera House, and somebody may be in Melbourne, and they could be in obviously Canberra, and they could be at home taking a selfie at the same time, participating in the event. They get the image, then they share it on their social platforms, and again, their family and friends get to say the message, which might be stay safe, or obviously we're open for business as such. It creates a mass participation opportunity when, let's face it, people are quite bored, have been stuck at home, and also there's STEM benefits for kids as well, because again, we can talk about or explain how the satellite passes over and the coordination of satellites and imagery and all the scientific element of that as well. I give an example here. I've used Tourism Australia as an example. Kylie Minogue is their champion for that particular organisation. And again, the example here would be the Sydney Opera House. And again, the message might be stay safe as the satellite passes over. And this would be the coronavirus destination message, if you like. And again, so post-pandemic, it sends a warm welcome, wish you were here, for example, and it could be visit Oz thereafter. So again, this can be, the creative is only limited by imagination. We just capture the image, we send the image to your chosen audience, who are then asked to participate, and then they share the message across the world thereafter. And it puts the user in control and means it's obviously more organic. So in summary, Global Spelfie allows millions to participate from the safety of their home, sharing their Spelfie message and with their family and friends across the globe thereafter. And we're trying to make a difference, as well as obviously potentially make some money. And there are elements of this that will help with plastic pollution potentially too. And certainly from the point of view of being sustainable and eco-friendly, our satellites are obviously in partnership with Airbus, are obviously powered by solar power as such as well. But we think together we can make a difference using imagery and social media thereafter. So Spelfie, or Space Selfie, we believe could be very useful for the events industry and the travel sector thereafter. I give you Spelfie.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a great explanation. So in terms of, if anyone has a question for Chris, please post it up into the comments and we'll get round to them. But I'll kick off by asking this. Obviously, your platform is there for, as you mentioned, there for events and things like that as well. Is it mostly, do you see it's being used by sort of bigger brands and bigger DMOs, etc., or can a local tour operator or a small event use your system as well?
They can. So fundamentally, we are primarily geared towards larger events. We're not. I don't believe Spelfie is particularly expensive, but again, that's all in beauty is in the eye of the beholder, if you like. So subject to the budget, obviously, and if you are looking at large audiences, then obviously that wouldn't be necessarily a major cost. So if you're going to spend money in promoting a particular region or a particular event, that event budget tends to be 2.5 times on average of what the cost of the sponsorship would be to sponsor that event. And what we're suggesting is that the brands could be 12 to 18 times more effective in terms of an ROI if they were to actually adopt obviously the Spelfie concept. So it's open to all, and we have even a luxury travel side of things we're looking at as well. So if you're actually renting out a luxury yacht or super yacht, at the end of that process you could theoretically capture the yacht from space as well. So there are budgets for most budgets, if that makes sense, but you're looking at tens of thousands as opposed to a few £1,000s to get this off the ground for that particular scenario.
Excellent. And with the current crisis that's happening just now, have you had to sort of change how you focus the business going forward, or is it just basically pause certain things for a while, or is it just all sort of guns blazing, still going full steam ahead at the moment?
No, it's definitely paused things. We've been affected massively. We had 3 air shows lined up this year, and it was devastated with that because that had been an audience of over 600,000 people there. And we have a motor show, a motor-related show that may be pushed back to later on this year as well. So they're all being pushed back or cancelled for next year. But we've got that relationship with those particular scenarios. So nothing's dead in that sense, but it would break your heart because this was the year we were going to have. So if your events technology and there are no events, this has been a difficult year for us. So we definitely have pivoted slightly in terms of messaging at events has become messaging for destinations, if you like, in that sense as well. And the power of that, we believe, so far the reaction we're getting has been very interesting.
Excellent. So, if anyone's got any questions, please post them up, and we'll get Chris to answer them. I've got one other one for you. How did you come up with an idea like this? No, what were you sitting in a bar one day and just had a fag packet and write something down? What made you think of actually doing sort of selfies from space?
It's a long story. I mean, I was asked a question by a couple of space scientists actually about if I could find a way of actually integrating space into a business model, that there were actually grants and help to help you do this. And I asked them, well, what ideas have you got, gents? And they said, none. And I'm okay, fantastic, okay. So I said, where do you start with this? The whole world, all these satellites. So I asked them a few questions, and you can Google all this stuff, don't get me wrong, but obviously how big, how fast, what's coming next. So I left them after buying a few coffees and went home. And a few days later, I literally was in the shower and I was thinking about different ideas, because that's where your best thinking actually happens. I was thinking about not taking selfies in the shower, by the way, but I was thinking about obviously this idea of space. And I was thinking the idea of air pollution, I think, is sound. I think the idea of satellite imagery that's up to date is really quite interesting as well. But even with the best of ideas, you have to market it to the world, and the cost of doing so is prohibitive, and getting noticed is really quite difficult depending on your marketplace and your budget. So I then thought about how do you engage with younger people, and what do they do, and what they like? They like to go to music festivals, and they like to take selfies. And I thought, well, how could we how could I capture that audience? That was selfies from space selfies. Has that been done before? And I literally came out of the shower, did some Googling research, and that hadn't been done before, yeah? And I thought, wow. So I got 2 NDAs signed by the 2 of the major suppliers, Airbus and Maxa, or Digital Globe as they were. And the rest is history. To some degree, we've now got contracts in place, and we have this vertical of being able to capture entire events from space in real time, and all the attendees, and creating that engagement opportunity. So the user gets the souvenir, the time-stamped souvenir, and even in this day and age with COVID, this will be something you'll never forget. This will be something that if you can get some form of souvenir and participate somehow in an event, even if it's closed doors, then that could be something that is really quite attractive.
Yeah, no, it sounds it. I just hope that events and things like that will kick back in again soon. It's I can imagine how rough this has been for everyone in the travel industry, including yourself as well. So fingers crossed, we'll all get out of this sooner rather than later. But
well, I see it going from being closed doors to maybe socially distanced events, maybe 500, 1,000, 5,000. It's going to take a long time, and we'll never get back to, or make it back eventually to what we were before. But a brand new way of working, I think, Chris, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I know Peter will have, who's coming up next, will have some views on this as well. But I think the industry is going to be vastly different when we come out of this, but that will bring up new opportunities as well.
I agree very much so.
Well, we've got no questions, so you everyone's either really shy or you've answered everything. Usually our travel massive group are not shy, so that's so you've let off lightly today. So
excellent. I'm still here.
So if anyone wanted to know more about Spelfie or how to get in touch and be on the platform, what's the best way of doing that?
They can contact me directly at chrisnewlands@spelfie.com through LinkedIn. You can go to spelfie.com website, and there's a part for partners. You can make an inquiry, and obviously we can take it from there as such. There's a pricing element to all that too, which we can share with you at that time as well. And we think it's incredibly powerful. And at 12 to 18 times returns, if you're going to invest 20,000 or 50,000, you're looking at a significant upside from that perspective. And it's something different. What if you continue to do the same thing? You'll always get the same result. So it's worth trying something new, especially in this new world we're all living in now.
Excellent. Actually, just as we say that, a couple of questions have came in. So there we go. You've not
Okay.
been let off. So we've got one from, and I can actually show these on screen. This is what I love about this software. So there we go. So Thomas has asked, perhaps I missed it, but how quickly do you get a Spelfie? So when you do the Spelfie through the app, how quickly do they get it?
So there are there's two versions of the Spelfie. There's live, effectively as a satellite passes over, we take a selfie and we identify you in the crowd because you're actually there. Now, the reason we say that the Spelfie is taken, or the satellite was taken between roughly 11:30 and 2 o'clock every day, because that's the optimum light opportunity. That's between 11:30 and 2 o'clock. Locally anywhere in the world, so the satellite always has the best image to be taken. So it takes currently it takes up to 3 hours for that image to be downloaded from space, because it's genuinely coming from space, and then we distribute it thereafter. But we reckon within 12 to 18 months, that'll be 10 minutes, because there's going to be a constellation of satellites so that you can bounce that image off of straight back to headquarters as such thereafter. So it's only going to get faster, bigger and better. But again, we're just getting the foothold into the sector just now.
That's incredible. 10 minutes. Wow.
We've
got one as well here from Michael. It sounds like a great idea. I think I heard you say air shows. Is the customer able to be the show attendee paying, or so is it the attendee paying, or is the sponsor paying? I think that's
so it's free for the attendees, and the sponsor would actually pay for this as well. So if you can imagine that sponsored by British Airways, for example, then British Airways would have their logo on there. When you share the image, it would be air show sponsored by, powered by British Airways from that perspective. So it's free to the user, and obviously the brand gets all that exposure. But there's also the ability to actually push notify to the attendees of the air show or any of the events. So we can drive data, we can drive traffic to your site, and you can even drive sales potentially through that as well. It's also event agnostic, so you can take the app to various different types of events and carry that with you. So it's not tied to one event. You can go to various events and capture those events. But again, it's all driven by the sponsor and the event being listed on the Spelfie app.
excellent. Excellent.
Okay.
Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough.
No, it's awesome.
I appreciate you taking the time to move this online. I was hoping to do this in person again, because if anyone's never met Chris, meeting in person, and a lot of knowledge and advice that he can give in the background. So hopefully at some point when we are able to meet up again, we can start to do another Travel Massive properly with the crowd in front of us, and hopefully we can do it again at some point soon.
Excellent. I'm here to learn as well, by the way. So delighted to, if there's any feedback at all, Chris, and happy to take it on as well. So, but thank you again for the invitation. Thanks.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Cheers. Thanks.
So thanks again to Chris. So we're going to go straight in to our next speaker. I know he's been waiting patiently at the side, and I'm going to bring in Peter Syme. Peter, there we are. I need to move a little bit more centred if you can.
Woo!
There we go. How are we?
We're good. Same, another day, lockdown, looking out the window, but all good.
Yeah. So if anyone's been to a Travel Massive before, they'll know who Peter is. But for those who don't know, Peter Syme of 1,000-mile journeys and obviously Disrupt Travel, Splash whitewater rafting. Anyone who knows Peter is a very outspoken but a vastly experienced veteran when it comes to tour operators. You know, he's a business advisor. So Peter, can't thank you enough for joining us online. I know you're a man in demand. So.
Well, I'd like to be in more demand than I am at the moment. I'd like to be actually delivering some of the stuff we should be, rather than the stuff we are at the moment.
I can imagine. So for those two or three who may be watching who don't know who you are, and do you want to just give a brief overview about yourself and what you do in the industry?
Sure. fundamentally I'm a tour operator. I have inbound tours into Scotland, still some into Morocco. Used to have a tour operator in Spain, and I have an outbound tour operator that goes to various challenging places around the world to do long expeditions, anywhere between 4 and 12 weeks. Obviously, that was pre-COVID, not so much during COVID, or not at all during COVID. Out with tour operating, I do strategic advising to tour operators and expedition operators around the world, and also speak at various travel conferences around the world.
Yes, and if anyone's ever been to Arrival or any of these other events and heard Peter speak, he knows his stuff. He's been there. It's probably nothing. If it's not been tried and tested, it doesn't exist. I think, Peter, I think you've pretty much tried and tested everything that's out there. So
I hadn't tried COVID. This is a new one to me. I've had a few disasters. If you're in travel, you have disasters. I didn't have a complete shutdown of the travel industry before. That's new.
That certainly is new. So on that, you've been a bit like myself, where you've opened up your amazingly opened up your diary to speak to countless tour operators all over the world, and offering your advice and your help during the COVID crisis. So and I know some people watching this and listening to this will have a general idea of how bad things are, but from your perspective, from speaking to other operators, etc., how bad really is some of these businesses and the industry as a whole at the moment?
I've been lucky enough over the last 6-7 weeks to speak to a range from the industry, and the range that I've spoke to sort of represents the industry. About 80% were small businesses from about 60 odd countries. So when I say small businesses, tour operators who are themselves or employing a couple of people up to 5 people, probably turning over under 250k. I've spoke to a range of tour operators who are in that kind of middle sector, who have multiple destinations, a lot of staff, some monthly bills that they can't get rid of, so really exposed during this time. I've also spoke to quite a few of the really large tour operators, who are turning over 50, 60, 70 million and more, and as well as having quite a few chats with the technology companies that are in the space that support all of us, because we don't exist without the technology being in there as well. So I've had a broad feedback from the whole industry, both day tour operators and multi-day, because people tend to forget about multi-day, but it is a major part of our industry. And it's all bad. There is no easy way of saying it. It is all a complete and utter disaster. No one is doing well at the moment. No one is even doing slightly well. There is still some bookings happening. Some people are managing to do bookings, not to deliver today, but bookings forward for the back end of the year for 2021. But we're talking single figure percentage, 1-2%, and someone who's used to getting 50 bookings a day and maybe getting 1 booking every 3 days. It is a disaster in every sector of the travel industry. No matter how big or how small you are, it's a disaster for everybody. No one's ever seen anything that shut down travel globally before. We've seen things that shut down travel. Chris, before the previous presentation from Chris, mentioned the Icelandic ice cloud. I was trapped in Morocco when that happened, so I can remember that vividly. We had the 2008 financial crash. We had the 2001 terrorism switch-off and all the wars after that. Nepal had a whole closed season in 2015. So there's always disasters in travel. So businesses need to be resilient and need to think about disasters and have a plan. But no one had a plan. No one had a plan for the whole travel world just closing down.
Certainly didn't. And I've spoken about this a few times before, and I know I mentioned to yourself is the only other thing that would be parable to this is if there was a world war going on that would shut down the whole industry. This is what people need to realise. This is how bad things are at the moment. Everything from the guy who makes mega bucks in the corporate companies all the way through down to the guy who sells hot dogs in the corner stand in New York. Every single person is affected by this. And you're going to start to see some big businesses start to shut down. I know here in the UK, you've got a lot of the retail starting to shut down, like Debenhams and all these other places going into administration. That's just going to have a snowball effect into other businesses and other sectors. So it's it's a hard time for everyone at the moment. But as we're going to hopefully talk about today, there are opportunities out there as well
Sure.
in terms of what we can look forward to. So again, this chat was to provide some insights and to help the viewers and the listeners watching this, and how some businesses can try to pivot their business in terms of creating new opportunities from this disaster. So what's your take on the steps that they must take now to survive? Now, do you see some businesses completely changing the types of products and the tours that they have and the types of things that they offer? Or what would you say is the things that businesses have to sort of be looking at just now?
The first thing is the obvious one. And although this is obvious, I'm still speaking to businesses who haven't done this enough. And this is something that should have been done 5 weeks ago. You have to cut your costs to the bone, right? You just have to. This is the level of disaster that you have to get your costs back to the minimum cost you can spend on a monthly basis, because that will give you a longer runway of survivability. And I've spoke to many businesses who have a bit of reserves, and they've made a decision that they're going to keep spending at X for X number of months. They shouldn't. They should be cutting that cost to give them more months if this goes on longer than what we're hoping. Because when you're in these situations, you have to plan for the worst scenario and hope for the best. But you can't plan for the best scenario. And people were initially planning for opening again in June and July. And it's just not going to happen at any scale. Even the back end of this year, if anybody gets any trade at all this year, they've done well. But you can't plan for that. You have to plan for the worst scenario. So the number one thing is get your costs back to the minimum you can operate to keep the business alive, and just so you can survive for the longest runway. Because the runway for this could be very long indeed. And depending on the type of operator you are, the runway will be longer for some than others. Those that are exposed to long-haul international travel, that's going to be a longer runway than those that can get local business. So the first thing is cost. Get them paid back to the minimum. The next thing is you've got to understand timelines. And for some operators, the timelines are very simple. If you're a UK operator operating in the UK and your customers are UK customers, your timeline's the same. You're listening to the UK government giving you the timeline that you're likely to be open with, because your customers are on the same time as you. If you get open, your customers are able to do business. Straightforward, simple. And the UK government keeps talking about 12 weeks up, 12 weeks down, so potentially 24 weeks from the start in March. So that's really important to understand your timeline, because all the projects you're doing, all the tasks you're doing at the moment, or you should be doing at the moment, go on your timeline in an order of priority. Where it gets a bit more confusing is when you have international customers and customers that come from different destinations, because you also need to understand their timelines. Because if you hope to get them in the future, you need to understand where they're open, when you're open, because both ends need to be open in order to do business. Now, for an operator that looks through their customer database and suddenly finds that their data is split between 10 different international destinations, that means they're understanding 10 different timelines. But you must go through that exercise, because you have to make some balanced judgments on what destinations it's going to be worth working with in the near to medium term, or worth marketing to. Because obviously it's irrelevant marketing to a destination that cannot physically get you customers here, or even when the transport lines are open again and flights are open again, there may be no demand from that destination to come here. So you have to make some logical decisions based on where your customers are coming from. The previous disasters have taught us one thing, and this one's no different. Disasters recovery always comes local first, regional second, long haul last. Every disaster is always recovered in the same way. The difference is, historically, the gap between domestic tourism recovering and long haul was normally pretty short, in many cases under 12 months. It ramped up pretty quick. There's pretty strong arguments that's not going to happen this time, because domestic tourism will open, but it won't open completely, because there's going to be restrictions on what you can do and what you can't do. And I have no idea what them restrictions are going to be, but I know there's going to be restrictions. Regional tourism will definitely open before long haul, because we're in this thing called EU, even though we've decided to leave because we're all mad. But the rest of Europe will want to get the borders with other countries in Europe open quickly, because if they leave them borders shut, that is a fundamental crack in the function of the EU. So Spain needs to be open with France. Spain needs to be open with Portugal. Italy needs to be open with Germany. The EU needs to get them borders open. So if they get them borders open, you've got to say there's going to be regional travel reasonably quickly. It may not be on planes, it may be driving, it may be by train, but there will be regional travel within the EU long before you're going to get long-haul international travel. And long-haul international travel is going to be the last thing to recover. Now, obviously, you have customers as a tour operator in Scotland or wherever you are in the world, wherever your destination is, you need to look at the destinations where all of these customers come from and then start make balanced decisions on where you're going to get your new customers from for a period of time. So if I'm an Italian operator in the north of Italy, which is a region that's been decimated, a lot of these Italian operators relied heavily on long-haul international USA customers. In the short, medium term, they're not going to see them. They're just not getting them back. Therefore, they have a border with Austria, they have a border with Germany, they have a border with France. They need to start doing the product that suits the markets that's closest to them, because these markets are probably, for a period of time, the only markets they're going to have access to. Now, this is easy to say, hard to do. An Italian operator who's been selling a pizza making experience to a USA customer for $90 can't sell that pizza making experience to an Italian for $1. It's just not happening. Again, so the product has zero value as it is to the locals. Therefore, it's a product change if you're targeting local. May not be as much a product change if you're targeting German or French or Austrian, but it will still be a change. There's probably a pricing change. And then finally, there's a marketing change, because you have to reach the market and change it, all that. Those three things, for some operators, are incredibly difficult and should not be underestimated. But the alternative to doing them is your business is dead, because you're not going to get long-haul international travel for a long time. In my opinion, probably 2 years at any volume, because you don't get this back until we get a vaccine. And vaccine ain't going to be, 1, discovered, 2, produced, 3, distributed in any quick time. It's going to be a 2-year minimum exercise to do that. And even if you do get travel back, the travel is going to be down because it's going to be restricted. People are going to get tested getting on aeroplanes, get tested getting off aeroplanes, which is going to dampen that long-haul travel. Therefore, your local market and your regional market, even if you don't want that market, you're going to have that market. It's the only market you're going to get. And your products, your pricing, and your marketing has to address that, not the market that you really want. Hopefully, we get back to the market you want at some point in the future, 2 years down the line. But in the short term, survivability is about what you can do, not what you want to do.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. No, I've been like you yourself, where I've been opening up my diary to various operators, and I've been speaking to them, basically saying, no, at least 12 months, and I agree with you. I think it could be a bit longer than that in terms of before international travel really picks up. So they're going to have to start thinking about what are they going to do in their business to capture the local market, to pivot their business. And the problems that I'm seeing at the moment is that a lot of operators are trying to shoehorn in their current product range for a local market, and it's like, no, if you're running a bus tour around your city, if you have to become a food tour provider or something else, it's going to be more for local based or more of an outdoor activity, which I think is going to be obviously huge coming up, outdoor activities and things like that at a local level. They're going to have to pivot their business drastically. I've heard of some businesses or some people saying they're just going to park the business and go and do something else, work in a call centre or something like that. And if that's what they want to do, that's fine. Personally, if it was me, I would still want to work in the actual industry and do something different. Even if it wasn't my passion, I would still want to be in that industry. I know that's just me. But what would you say to businesses who are finding it hard to pivot at the moment and finding it hard to change their product range, or maybe just too stubborn to do so? What would your advice be for them?
It isn't. If they're too stubborn to do so, well, they're out of business. It's as simple as that. And you're either in business or you're not. You have to have that desire, want, and this time you have to be able to fight for a long period of time to stay in business. This is a fight, and if you're not up for the fight, go and do something else. And it's not going to be easy to do something else either in a lot of sectors. But there is work in the sectors elsewhere that are doing okay. So if you want to stay in it, again, I come back to you have to do what you have to do, not what you want to do. Therefore, you have to change your product. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. Changing a product, actually, I think, is not that difficult. Changing the marketing for your product when you've built your history delivering something else is incredibly difficult. In some cases, it's changing the language, changing the and how do you get to these French customers if you've never dealt with French customers before, but they're on your border? Therefore, this is incredibly difficult stuff for people to do product and marketing. However, there's one or two things that maybe will help you. The OTAs, not my favorite people in the world, but they're there for a reason, and they might just be the ones that allow you to put your new product up because you've already got a relationship with them. Therefore, it'll be a case of you loading the product. It should get up fairly quickly. You can market test whatever you come up with via the OTAs, because if they can't sell it, you're not probably going to be able to sell it, but you're not taking the cost of trying to market that in the short term. Obviously, if you see some traction, you then double down on your direct marketing with it as well and trying to get it out there. The OTAs have an advantage in the current situation when we come out and we start traveling again, that because of their global reach, they can laser target their marketing spend on whichever destinations open first. And none of us know which destinations are going to be open first and which tourism happens first. But OTAs will be able to, if Sydney, Australia opens first, and it's the only city in the world that's trading, the OTAs target that city with all their laser-focused marketing spend. So they have an advantage over all of us that they can target wherever opens and really focus on it. So they could be your friend from testing product if you've never done it before, and obviously they target to all the different nationalities in the language that they want. Partnering with other businesses. You may see your local businesses as competition. And I said this 6-7 weeks ago when this thing started, and we didn't realize how big it was going to be. I said, you really need to start speaking to your competition now because you want to cut your back end costs jointly. So if you are all using a hired bus each, let's use one hired bus between the three years and cut the cost between the. We've gone way past that now. That was 6-7 weeks now. Maybe now is the time to actually merge with 2 or 3 of your local competitors, because 3 brains are better than 1, and come up with some new products, or one of them is a slightly different product that does work. Your product doesn't work, but you've got resources that guy hasn't got. So this is a time for really thinking about what you need to do, not what you want to do. If you want to stay in travel, because I'm also very confident that travel will be back, and travel will still be a great industry and a big industry, and people are always going to want to travel, but we have to get to that point, and we don't know when that point is. I'm betting on it being a long way away. Therefore, I'm structuring my own businesses to be able to cope with the short and medium term, because what I want, I think, is a long way away.
And if it does happen sooner, it's a bonus.
Yeah, if it happens sooner, nobody's going to be complaining if it's happens sooner. And if some of the stuff I've wrote and done in webinars and people are saying, oh, you're wrong, well, I'm over the moon I'm wrong. I'll be jumping, I'll be running down the street naked if I'm wrong.
I'm going to hold you to that. I know if I get a few beers down, you probably would as well. So in terms of, to go back to what you were saying, in terms of business pivoting, would you, I know my take on this, but it'd be good to get your take on it. Would you say if it meant a business had to completely rebrand for a local market, they'll park their current brand and their current resources, but create a new brand? I know that will come with issues with rebuild SEO and all these other things again, but would you recommend that's maybe something that we need to probably do for the local market?
If they have to do it, but I would say that's your last option. You have to explore everything before that. Can you partner with somebody else who is in a different sector of tourism, who's more suited to local travel? Because you've got to remember, there's a lot of tourism operators suited to local business, and it depends which country you're in. If you're in the USA, if there's any operators here for the USA, 90% of their tourism is internal anyway. And there's only 10% of USA clients leave the USA. So they've got a 90% in tourism market. The only one that's bigger in the world is China. That's a massive internal market. The UK is a 63% internal market. So some destinations have big tourism markets anyway that will be boosted if the people who normally leave can't leave. So all the people heading to Spain every year and France and all the rest of it, if they can't go, that 63% of the UK, 67% UK tourism market is actually boosted. So you really need to get in amongst this. There's some destinations, just by their geography and by what's happened, don't have a big internal market. Portugal only has a 9% internal market. Spain's only got an 18% internal market. So southern European states like Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, they really need this regional travel. They can sort of survive without long haul, but they really need regional travel opening up. They need the UK people to be able to go there. They need the French coming down. They need the Scandinavians coming down to these southern European countries. because they don't have much of an internal market. So in their case, it's not just changing the product. They're changing the product for a market that hasn't really got any background of doing internal tourism products. So that is where you really jump into a completely new, different part of the industry. And there's many people in Spain go out and eat a meal, go out and drink wine, but that is the limit of their interaction with tourism destinations. They don't purchase anything else to do with tourism. Some accommodations, eat a meal, drink some wine. So I would say rebranding is the last thing you do after you've explored every single option, because in most brands, there'll be something within your brand that you can probably change to allow new products to be introduced, or you can go and work with another operator that has a more suitable brand. I just think a complete rebranding is the last thing, but you have to look at the opportunity of that. If you do go down that line, you make it work. You come out of this with two businesses. You've then got a local business, and then as the international and regional traffic comes back, as it will at some point, you then have two businesses. So there is an opportunity cost there as well. If you're focused enough, determined enough, can see the local market that you want to service, you've got the skills and ability to do it, you're basically building a new business.
And it's the one thing that people have at the moment is time. So it's exploring all the options. And
time is something that we all have in abundance. One thing that tour operators, myself included, are all rubbish at is making content, creating content. We all talk about it, but we're not that great at doing it. Every single operator in the world at the moment should be making a content bank. We've all got the time. Fill that bank with your next 2 years worth of content. Don't use it. Just stick it in the bank. Use drip feeds at the moment. Use some stuff at the moment suitable for the time. But your conversion content, your videos, your photographs, all the stuff that you would use normally that you don't get round to doing because you're too tired after running tours all day, get it done now, stick it in the bank. And then for the next 2 years, when you're really focused on trying to rebuild your business, you're not going to be worried about going out and having to write that article at 9:30 at night once you've got in from a tour.
Great advice, and it's advice I give all the time. It's like create a backlog of stuff, and then you've got it there ready. If new things come into it, you post them up, fine. But at least you've got something to fall back on. You're not always chasing your tail all the time. It's well, and again, everyone's got the time now just to do so. But as you can imagine, we've had a few questions come in. So I'm going to start going through these. One is it just says Facebook user, so unfortunately I don't know who this is. Will the local regional market be large enough to sustain tourism economy? Again, I suppose that'll be dependent on the destination.
That depends on the destination. If you're in the UK, 67% is definitely, and you're going to have the extra people on top of it because there is a culture of doing that. But like I say, if you're in Portugal, the fact that the Portuguese are staying at home in Portugal, but they haven't got a tradition of using their own tourism products. So it really does depend on destination. You have to speak to your local, your equivalent of the DMO, the people who has the data. So anybody in any country listen to this, get in touch with the people who have the data, your internal market versus your international market tourism that's coming in. You need to understand your internal market. Don't go start building things, new products, new marketing until you understand who you're marketing it for, and does that market exist? Have they got a willingness to purchase? So you need to get that data from each. If anybody wants to message me after this, I have a global set of data that allows you just numbers. You need to be comfortable with spreadsheets, but it lets you know the size of internal markets purely in numbers, how many £1 million are spent in the internal market rather than internal tourism coming in. So first of all, understand, do you have a market? How big's the market? Where is it? Before you start building but if you do have one, it's more than big enough. You can build, it's the same market. It's people just not going from the USA to Italy are suddenly staying in the USA, but they're going to spend some money in the USA. They may not spend as much as obviously the flight and the accommodation. They may not spend as much, but they are still going to spend money in the USA.
Well, that's the thing, though. People, when we come out of this, will just want to escape and get out there and explore and get outdoors, and they will want to travel. Just because they can't fly doesn't mean they're going to sit in their homes or sit in their gardens and not go anywhere. They'll do it in their own destinations or the surrounding destinations. So people will want to travel. It's just human nature to do so. Just to get out from the same four walls you're going to be stuck in for months on end. So, I don't see why the local markets can't increase it a lot more in the coming months. So we've got a question from Anne Daly. Do you think the local product has to be an experience rather than a tour, as people driving are more likely to find themselves rather than pay a guide? So more experiences rather than tours. How do you see that playing out?
Good question. And yes is the answer. If you're pivoting or changing to the local, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the local. Now, I'm in Scotland, Chris is in Scotland, so I'll use Scotland as an example. And I'll use one of my operations as an example. People pay us to do experiences because we take them down rivers or canyons, and they can't really do it themselves. So people will pay for that experience. But is it a local Scots guy going to get on a bus and drive around the sites of Scotland as a tour? The chances are no, because one, he can do it in his car himself, and two, he's probably already done it and knows all the sites and the history and stuff like that. So selling a tour using a lot of the cultural and history of your destination to your local customers is an exceedingly hard ask. But selling a experience where you're doing something that the individual can't do on their own is a bit easier. So this comes back down to product market fit. When you're designing, if you are pivoting, if you are changing, if you are trying to do something new, you need to understand your market and you need to understand what you're trying to do with them. And like I said, don't try and sell that pizza making class to an Italian for $1 because he ain't buying it. And again, and a Scotsman's no buying a tour around Loch Ness, Ben Nevis, Stirling Castle on a bus either. So you really need to get the right product match in the market. And that's where a lot of thought and innovation needs to go in. I'm also convinced we're going to see lots of new nice products come out of this because, again, bad times force people to do stuff they probably wouldn't have done before. So I'm expecting to see lots of new experiences and new products come out of this that will actually last the long term, can actually have a great long-term future and make people good businesses.
For sure. I can't agree more. We've got a number of other questions. I'm just going to bring these up as well. So I think you're going to be busy, Pierre. We've got here, what we've got. Salvatore, any recommendations on how to make some money in order to survive these months we're in lockdown? I think we have to reinvent the industry with digital products experiences. So what's your take on things like virtual tours and digital products? Do you think, is that something we should be focusing on just now? Is it just taking people's time away from other aspects?
I have conflicting views on this, and I would love to be proved wrong on the second bit I'm going to say here. But the first bit is, if you're producing digital virtual products, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're producing content. So that stuff you hated doing before, you're now doing it, right? So you're producing content. So that's a tick. That's a positive. Use that content now to try and drive whatever you're trying to drive, whether it's selling an experience or selling a voucher or just engaging with your past customers. So producing content is good. Just make sure you can reuse that content. If it's totally for this time and minute, it's probably in a style that's not reusable in 18 months' time. So think about that when you're producing it. So tick content. What is that content doing? It's developing a deeper relationship with your customer. Now, the only thing a tour operator has that is strategic value, which I repeat time and time again, the only thing you have as strategic value is your relationship with your customer. Everything else can be better, more money spent on it, you buy better technology. Somebody can beat you in everything apart from your relationship with your customer and how deep you make that. So you're producing content and you're deepening your relationship with the customer. Two things that I'm always ranting on about. So I think this is great. When it comes, and it's also a new marketing channel. What we're actually doing collectively without any coordination is there's currently tens of thousands of operators creating virtual experiences. Therefore, that is a new marketing channel. Somebody will come along and aggregate all that and make some business out of it. Somehow, I'm sure it's a new marketing channel. So we're creating content, we're deepening the relationships, and we've created a new direct marketing channel. Three things that are brilliant. My negative on it is, does it make any money? If the money is to be paid for the digital product, not money down the line when you get a customer because you've deepened the relationship and entertained them, it definitely makes money further down the line. But does it make money at this time to help you stay in business? I'm waiting for the data to come from many companies who are trying it and hopefully prove me wrong. I know people are selling, they're getting $10, $15, doing so many sales a day, So that's great. But I have a feeling a lot of these sales are sympathy sales. What's a sympathy sale? That's past customers who are feeling a bit sorry for the tour operator they've had a great experience with last year. So have made one purchase. They're probably not going to purchase again. And then there's the opportunity cost. This stuff isn't easy to do well. Therefore, all that effort and time you're doing it, could that time be better spent on some things else?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it comes down to what is your real desperate need. Do you desperately need cash that much to just survive, that every $15 is going to make a difference or pay your guide $15? Or if it's that desperate for cash, are you better actually hibernating the business or hibernating what you do, or if your guide not doing it and going and getting a job, to just hibernate the time out? So it is, I want to be proved wrong on this, because I think it'll be fantastic if we have created a new revenue channel. But all industry sectors, when they produce a digital product, the price of that digital product eventually erodes to zero. That's just the rules of digitalization in the digital era. Whatever it starts at, it gets eroded and it goes to zero. People normally have that model where you get a massive reach by your digital products and digital services, but you make the money doing something else. But that comes back to it being a new channel, comes back to it being, again, a new great marketing resource, but the money comes much later down the line. I just don't see the money coming at the point of purchase in sufficient quantities to keep businesses going, businesses alive. I hope I'm wrong. I'm wrong all the time, so I'll probably end up wrong on this as well. One or two companies may find out they're actually better at this stuff than they are at running tours. So you might get one or two companies who end up doing fantastically well at it. But is the industry going to do fantastic well at it? Not. Are we as good as Netflix, Amazon for $9 a month? No, we're not.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting take. No, I suppose a similar thing could have been said about something like audio tours or something like that. But I think I agree with you. I think for most businesses, it's just putting a elastoplast on the current situation. It's something maybe nice to do for your current customers to keep them engaged, but to make money from it. But maybe one, as you say, one or two companies might do really well out of this, and it's going to be a new niche market for them. But it is only going to be one or two companies. It'll be them. It'll be specialised in that. People will know that company because it's a virtual tour. For everyone doing it, and as you say, I put out so much free content. I know you do a lot of free webinars and everything else. People start to expect this sort of stuff for free eventually. So and it's more of a lead-in tool into other things and that sort of stuff. So it's a hard one. It really is a hard one. But I
do think there'll be a group of operators who do it pretty well. They don't make money from it, but they do it pretty well, and they keep it in their marketing mix going forward, because they realise the value of it from getting engaged customers and deepening that engagement, realise the value from the reach, and realise the value as a marketing channel. So I don't think it will go away. I think it will grow, and it will become yet another part of your marketing mix in your business once we're up and trading again. So I think it's here to stay, and I think it's got loads of positives. The positive to me is just I'm not going to make enough money to pay my bills out of that. It may help me convert more customers for the stuff that does pay my bills, though.
Yeah. Well, I've got, before we finish, if you don't mind, I've got 3 more questions, and we'll wrap it up there. 2 of them are from LinkedIn, which unfortunately I can't put on screen. That part hasn't worked with the software yet. One of them is from Pierre Cruf, and he's asked, how do you find the support from the government in the UK coming across? Is it helpful, or do you feel let down at the moment for the travel industry?
Probably the wrong person to answer, because I've always believed you stand on your own 2 feet and don't ask the government for nothing. So probably the wrong person to ask. They've come up with the schemes. I know the grant scheme for people with premises has paid out to many. My own application's been in 29 days now. It's not been paid. I've had no communication saying why it's not been paid. I have a generic email back. So that 10-day turnaround for grants is not really working as far as my personal experiences goes, but I know other people that got it in day 12, day 10. So it has worked for others. The furlough scheme, I think, is great because it allows employees to get a revenue coming in, pay their bills. The bit I find a bit strange about it is this ban that people shouldn't be working when they're on furlough. So the government is basically paying people to destroy the productivity of the economy, which not everybody not everybody who's on furlough can work. Obviously, if you're a chef, it's difficult to work if you're on furlough. But people who work in the digital, and many of the people who work for tour operators on furlough can be worked. So I find that non-working when you're on furlough just idiotic, and that just tells me there's nobody in government that understands economies and can how to build it. We've got an issue with productivity in this country anyway, and they're just enhancing it by telling everybody to sit up with a drink wine and put their feet up. So I don't understand that bit. The loan package is obviously, by the numbers that's coming in, it's huge, available cash, but is it really available because people are really struggling to access the loans because the banks are applying really awkward processes to get to it? If the money is there and you want to borrow, I just question tour operators to can you work with that finance or debt you're taking on if your business is at 50% of the volume you had before. So it may be a lot of the reason, as well as the bank's been awkward to get to the money, there may not be the demand the government thinks there will be for debt, because a lot of business owners will be doing the runway cash flow projection. And if this is what my future businesses looks like, I can't afford to take that debt because I'm not going to be able to pay it. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I do think they made an effort. I just don't think they have enough people in government who have run businesses to actually do stuff that makes a difference. I mean, the biggest thing that could make a difference is all them hundreds, millions of people on furlough. Millions of them could be doing productive work. And it just seems crazy to not let them do any work.
Oh, I agree. And no, I've been lucky enough. I've not had to furlough any of my staff or anything like that yet. Again, all this could change weeks and months down the line. No one has a crystal ball, but so far so good. So I can't complain with that. I'm not having to do it. But that's from a business owner's point of view. Say we, and obviously we help market lots of tour operators. So say, for example, we lose half of our customer base, but we've still got half of them who need to be serviced. But if I don't make enough money because of losing half of those customers to service the ones who are still with us, and I have to put my staff on a furlough, I'm basically going to lose all my customers because they're not allowed to work. So it's idiotic. It just makes no sense.
You've also got the calculation that the businesses who have had to furlough, and I'm in that situation, no work's getting done. Therefore, when we restart, we really are starting again from base. There's no work in the pipeline. Therefore, if the government thinks all these people on furlough are coming back to jobs, they're living in cloud cuckoo land. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of companies are going to axe a lot of the people who are on furlough as we go back to business, because the business is suddenly zero or a tiny percent of what it was. So if you've got 30 employees that you put on furlough, you're probably only going to need 5 or 6 back because you're starting from the base. You're not starting from where you left off. If you were a $10 million operator, you're not anymore. You're starting from zero again. Therefore, you don't need 30 staff. So all the government's done is destroy productivity by that and delay the unemployment numbers going up.
I can't agree with you more, honestly. It's just crazy. I've got two more questions. Second last one was from LinkedIn as well. Would you, and I can help answer this as well at some point, but would you recommend targeting things like Facebook ads for locals? And on the caveat, just adding to that, what do you think about people who are still running things like Google ads at the moment as well?
Well, if you're doing paid marketing at the moment, you obviously have cash in the business. So if you have cash in the business and you've done your runway and you've cut your costs, I would still be doing a little bit of paid marketing if I had enough cash to do it, which I haven't. But for the operators who haven't got cash, paid marketing, you should still be marketing, but you shouldn't be paying to market. Even though we know at the moment Facebook ads get fantastic value, Google ads are fantastic value, but you physically can't get anybody booking at the moment. And those, particularly PPC ads, are for conversion. They're not there for inspiration, they're there for conversion. Facebook ads slightly different. They can act as inspiration and conversion. But Google PPC, it's a converting tool. You can't convert at the moment because you can't operate. Therefore, I wouldn't be doing paid ads. Mm-hmm. For targeting locals coming out of this, both of them are exceedingly useful. Both have the tools within the back ends of them to target exactly the locals you need. You've got to mind, a local's not a local coming out of this. If you are deciding you're going after the local market, there are 2 local markets coming out after this. There's the ones economically able to do stuff, and there's the ones uneconomically able to do stuff because they've been laid off, lost their jobs, didn't do well at the government's mad schemes. So who is the ones that can come and do your tours, your experiences? Well, anybody working in the health service, thanks to them all, my wife included, they're doing pretty well because they're working 6 days a week and working all hours. Anybody supplying devices or kit to the health service, they're doing well. Anybody in food manufacture and food retail, they're doing well. So every operator should have a spreadsheet with a list of industries that they don't want to target and a list of industries that they do want to target. Because everybody who's got the money to do what we do tend to be working or retired, but they tend to be working. And you want them working in the industries that have done okay on the back of this, because then your marketing spend will be better targeted and the conversion will do well. Because if I spend time marketing to hotel staff or pub staff like I used to, because their companies often paid for them to do the stuff I do, I'm probably going to get no return on that, because they're going to be every pound, every dollar's a prisoner when they're on the recovery. Therefore, I'm probably wasting my time marketing to them. But am I wasting my time marketing to people in the health service or the police or food manufacturer or the supermarkets? No, I don't think I am. They've been cooped up. They've been working really hard. They've got some money in the bank because they've not been able to spend it. Therefore, they'll be looking for things to do when they come out of this. So marketing is going to have to become more laser targeted than what it already was. But the two best products for doing that are Facebook ads and Google PPC.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll add on to that. It's like what we're advising some customers now, again, only if they can afford it. If you are able to spend even something as little as £5 or something a day on Facebook ads, just to keep your brand awareness up. And that's purely what it is. It's purely for brand awareness, not for selling at all. Google ads, we're pretty much telling people there's no point at this moment. But when we come out of this, and just by default, people will be searching for more local-based activities just because that's the only thing they can do. So by default, that's the search terms that people should be optimizing for when they can do things like Google ads, etc. further down the line. So we got a question from Kathy. And then we do have one more, and that will be the last, because the last question is going to be quite an interesting one. But we've got one from Kathy. What are your top tips for appealing to the local Scottish market? Basically, I think she's saying that she has been helping out another company, mostly with itineraries for Americans, many first-time visitors. She'd love to make this service more attractive to the British, Scottish people, but doesn't know that market very well. So how would you think, for someone who's maybe more geared towards the Americans and international market, how they can sort of switch their content and switch their itineraries around for?
But the product as it is, targeting Americans, is not, I mean, I could be wrong again, but it's normally not going to be the right product for a UK market, because it'll be very culture, history focused, and at a price point that the locals are not going to pay. And you've also got to understand what is your local market. So I'll give you an example. Pre-COVID, my local market of 30 miles around my Scottish business didn't do business with us. We just very rarely got a customer who wasn't a tourist within that local market who was a local. Once we got over 30 miles away, out to 150 miles away, we had a sweet spot between 30 and 150 miles, which took in Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, up to Aberdeen. And then we would get people coming in who were local. So we understood that sweet spot of our local market. Going forward, because I need to increase my local to replace my international customers that I suspect are not going to be here, I will increase my local market to include the whole population of Scotland, which I didn't before. And so anybody anywhere in Scotland will be a target on my local marketing going forward. My regional market, first layer, will be England, because I now believe someone driving up from London is a damn sight more likely than it was previous. And even if they come by train, or the domestic flights start before regional and international flights. So you have to understand your market in layers and put radiuses around them, because distance is always a barrier. That's a fact. That's just, it doesn't matter what your product is, distance is a barrier. Where are you delivering your product and service? And then distance becomes a barrier to that person getting to it. And you're more likely to convert somebody who can get to you and back. If you just think about the economy again, someone who has to come and stay in a hotel or stay in a lodge or stay in a villa, they're going to have to spend more than somebody who just comes and does the experience and go home again. So there'll be people in Glasgow and Edinburgh, if you're in the centre of Scotland, that will go and come home again because they have enough money to do something, but they don't have enough money to be away for the whole weekend. And then you've got people that will have the money to be away for the whole weekend. So you're doing all this based on distance and economy. But to get back to the product, if it's a product targeted at a US customer, it is probably not going to work on a Scottish market. It may work on some of the market down in the south of England. It may work on an Irish market. but it's probably not going to work on the Scottish market. Therefore, it is understanding of what the Scottish market is in that distance relation to you, and then changing that product to suit the market. It's hard for me to say without actually seeing what the product is, but you have to change the product. And I don't see the traditional North American tour, sightseeing, traditional Scottish experience, Celts, whiskey, Highland cows, and nice pub experience in the evening, and some nice meals on the West Coast. All of that stuff we do for the USA traveller, it's not really going to convert into a Scottish market.
No, I agree. Well, that was okay, Kathy. So the very last question is from Andrea. Any suggestions for a food tour company that was about to be launched in June? I suppose it depends if it's if she's going to be targeting locals or not, and whether I obviously don't know where that destination is, but
so the first thing, Andrea, is put back the launch. Is the first advice. The launch is probably not going to happen in June, but things are maybe not as bad as you're thinking they are, because prior to launching you had huge competition. And now I would suggest that the competition is getting smaller by the week. So it's not a bad time to do startups as we come out of this, but obviously you have to get your timing correct. There's no point in launching if you can't deliver the product. So doing startups at the moment by default isn't a bad time. You just have to appreciate the market's going to be a lot smaller. Therefore, you have to target the people that is available rather than a bit of the same rules as the existing businesses. Who you intended targeting as your customer is probably not who you're going to be intending, or who you are actually targeting as your customer in the early days. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because if you do build a local business because that's who you can reach, that means the fundamentals under your business are stronger for future disruptions to the travel industry. Local businesses are stronger in the long term than people exposed to lots of international. So I still think it's a good time to launch new businesses in this sector. I think it's a good time if you can be different from what's there. If it's just another food tour company in a city or a destination that's already got 20 or 30, and in some cities I've looked at, like some of the Italian cities, it's like you can't count how many food operators there are there. So you really need to look at where you are, who's still there. Are you in the right destination, and do you have the right market before you actually launch? And are you different enough from the ones that already exist there? But I wouldn't say don't do a startup. Startups that history and data tells us, startups that are formed in the worst of times create better businesses in the long term.
Yeah, I agree. If anything, starting just now, there will be, as you mentioned, lots of businesses who aren't doing anything marketing-wise, aren't doing anything at any point. So now is probably the prime time to, as you say, start, because you can start building up lots of content, start building up your SEO sort of foothold, and getting a hold on social media and everything else. And then when we come out of that, you'll be, if we're out of this in 3 months' time, 4 months' time, you're going to have a strong foundation, rather than starting in 3 or 4 months' time. So it's building it up now and getting sort of brand awareness out there, building up your email marketing list for future bookings and everything else when we all come out of that. So yeah, I think just now launching at the moment is probably as good enough time as any.
There's never a perfect time to do a startup. Startups are hard. And if they weren't hard, everybody would do it and have their own business. They're incredibly hard. So there's never a perfect time. And although now looks a bad time, it's not. There is going to be a travel market. The travel market may be the size it was 10 years ago for the first few years, but that's still a massive market. And all it means is that the really good operators with the best product and the best marketing and the best all-round package will survive, and other ones won't. It's just the rules of the market. So I hope we see a lot more startups starting at this period that are more sustainable, because a lot of the startups, a lot of the business I've spoken to in the last 6 weeks, they've been going less than 5 years. I'd say over half of them businesses have been going less than 5 years, and they didn't really build a sustainable business. They built a great experience business. The customers loved them. I've checked the reviews. Most of them are all with 5-star reviews, but there was no strong fundamentals under the business. They were taking all of their customers from various platforms, so they had no direct relationship with the customers. They hadn't deepened the relationship. They were great businesses if things were going well, but they weren't great businesses if things even switched 10%, 20% down, never mind a complete wipeout. So businesses that start in the worst of times tend to build stronger foundations and will last longer. So do your food tour startup, but do quite a bit of thinking about it before you actually launch.
Well, Peter, I've taken a lot of your time, so I can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom and your honest advice with everyone, with everyone viewing and watching and going to be listening to this later on in the various podcasts. So thank you again, and I really do appreciate the time.
Thanks, Chris, and to the other Chris that was on earlier.
Yeah, well, I'm going to invite Chris back in a second,
Right.
just to do a little thank you at the end. So if you just bear with me, I've got a little announcement in terms of next month's show. I'm just going to show this. So next month, again, we were hoping to do this live in a venue in Glasgow, but again, it's going to be online. So we're going to have Chris Wayne from Unique Adventure Tours. And he's going to be talking about, he's literally just before this crisis kicked in, he's literally just started his own new business. And he's going to be talking about the pitfalls of starting up a new business, the challenges, and there's certainly a lot of challenges now that have came up, and any successes he's seen with that. So he's going to talk about how he has set up his businesses. So if you're thinking about setting up your business, Andrea, if you're thinking about setting up your business, this might be a podcast for you. And we're going to speak to Patrick O'Shaughnessy. I hope I pronounced that right. I can never pronounce that last name right. And he is from Visit Scotland, and he's going to be talking about digital marketing foundations and being visible at the right moments. And I'm sure COVID will play a huge part in all that as well. So I'm going to invite Chris and Peter back. There we go. I think you need to unmute your mic, Chris. I don't know if you can.
I can.
There we go. There we go. So thanks again to the two of you for participating in the first proper sort of Travel Massive Live digital tourism show live sort of show. So I hope that wasn't too strenuous for you guys.
No, good. I'm just wondering, is it compulsory you have someone called Chris on every show?
Yeah, well, we've doubled up. You've got it in stereo just to. In fact, you have literally got one either side of you at the moment. From what I can see.
And then the next show has also got another Chris Wayne. So it's like,
that's of course. Yeah.
It just seems to be Chris on every show.
No, I've enjoyed listening to Peter as well, actually, as I always do. So it was good to participate. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet your audience. I've made a few connections already, so certainly it's been a great night. So thank you.
I know I've seen you've been busy on LinkedIn. I've been watching that down the side. So yeah, you've been busy texting away while Peter was on. So thanks again, guys, and everyone who's watching. Tell us how you liked the show. I know obviously we're broadcasting across multiple platforms. Leave your comments. Did you like the format? Did you like how this worked with this new piece of software we're using? We'd love your feedback, and I'm sure if you've got any questions, the guys they're on LinkedIn and they're on the usual platforms and will be able to help you out as well and give any advice. I'm sure the guys will offer that for you. So thanks again, and until the next Travel Massive in the end of April, the last Tuesday in April, we shall see you all then. So thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, Peter. Thank you all.